metal bearing and crankshaft. A balance weight is attached to each arm of the crankshaft by tightening the balance weight clamping bolts to the specified angle. The main bearing is of the suspension metal type. At the flywheel side timing gear case of the number 1 main bearing, the num 0 main bearing is provided, and it is attached with thrust metal and journal metal. Each bearing cap is fixed with 2 mounting bolts and 2 side bolts on both the operating side and non-operating side. The mounting bolts are tightened to the specified hydraulic pressure. The side bolt of the number 0 main bearing cap is equipped only on the non-operating side. The crankshaft transfers the linear motion of the piston into rotational motion that is transmitted to the load. Crankshaft are made up of forged steel. The forged crankshaft is machined to produce the crankshaft bearing and connecting rod bearing surfaces. The rod bearings are eccentric or offset from the center of the crankshaft. This offset converts the reciprocating, up and down, motion of the piston into the rotary motion of the crankshaft. The amount of offset determines the stroke, distance the piston travels, of the engine. The connecting rods also have bearings inserted between the crankshaft and the connecting rods. The bearing material is a soft alloy of metals that provides a replaceable wear surface and prevents galling between two similar metals, that is, crankshaft and connecting rod. Each bearing is split into halves to allow assembly of the engine. To facilitate the check or replacement work, set the piston adjacent to the main bearing to be disassembled at a position about 120 degrees before the TDC fit a hydraulic jack and connect it with a hydraulic pump. The main bearing cap is of the suspension metal structure fixed to the cylinder block with 2 clamping bolts, with the tightening nuts tightened to the specified hydraulic pressure, and 2 side bolts tightened to the specified torque. The side bolts for the datum part, num 0, main bearing cap are equipped only on the non-operating side. To the number 1, 2, 6 and 7 main bearing caps, side bolts of different lengths are provided to clamp also the engine supporting feet. Remove the side bolts from the main bearing to be disassembled. Loosen the main bearing cap clamping nuts, applying the hydraulic pressure to the hydraulic jack. Remove the main bearing cap tightening nuts and attach the main bearing cap holding implement to the main bearing cap clamping bolts. Lock the drawing out tool body 1 to the main bearing cap bolts with the bolts 2. Then screw the bolt 3 to the main bearing cap and turn the nut 4 to draw out the main bearing cap. Screw each circular nut, 6, into the corresponding holding bolt, 5, to lock the holding bolt with the corresponding main bearing cap clamping bolt. Adjust the position of circular nuts to make them hold the main bearing cap. Remove the main bearing lower metal, remove the upper metal, fit the attaching / detaching pin 7 to the crankshaft oil hole from the no operating side, so that the head of attaching detaching pin lies along the outer periphery of crankshaft. Slowly turn the flywheel in the direction of engine rotation and draw out the upper metal to the operating side. Thrust metals are equipped on both the front and the rear of the datum part, number 0, main bearing cap. Remove the lub. Oil pump and side bolt on the non-operating side first, and then disassemble the number 0 bearing cap, in the same way as for the num 1 through 7 main bearing caps. Carefully check and service the main bearing metals. If the clearance between the crankshaft and the main bearing metals becomes too large, the lubricating oil pressure drops to burn out the metals and increase the deflection of crankshaft, possibly resulting in serious accidents, such as a breakage of the crankshaft. Check for wear and burnout. If the clearance exceeds the maximum allowable value due to wear, replace both the upper and lower metals as a pair. Fix the dial gauge stand to the cylinder block. Put the dial gauge in contact with the crankshaft. Then move the crankshaft forward to set the indication of the gauge to 0. Move the crankshaft backward. Then read the value indicated by the gauge. The indicated value is the thrust clearance. Reassemble main bearings in the following sequence. Turn the flywheel to lower the oil hole in the crankshaft below the center of crankshaft. Directing the pawl of the upper metal toward the non-operating side, insert the upper metal along the crankshaft. Position the upper metal in the forward-backward direction so that its pawl will mate with the pawl hole in the cylinder block. Attach the upper metal inserting implement to the main bearing cap. Insert the attaching / detaching pin 7 to the crankshaft oil hole. On the non-operating side, tighten the circular nuts 6 of the main bearing cap, holding implement until the upper metal inserting implement 8 is about to make contact with the rear of the upper metal. Slowly turn the flywheel in A, direction reverse, to the direction of engine rotation. Attach when the pawl of the metal has been aligned with the pawl hole in the cylinder block. Continue turning the flywheel until the metal end aligns with the cylinder block end. Loosen the circular nuts 6 to lower the main bearing cap. Remove the metal attaching / detaching pin 7 and metal inserting implement 8. Then incorporate the lower metal, tighten the circular nuts 6 and remove the holding bolts 5. Then fit main bearing cap tightening nuts.
Tighten the nuts until the main bearing cap makes a close contact with the cylinder block. Tighten the side bolt on the non-operating side to half of the specified torque. Tighten the side bolt on the operating side to its seating by hand. Tighten the main bearing cap tightening nuts to the specified hydraulic pressure. Tighten the side bolt on the non-operating side to the specified torque. Tighten the side bolt on the operating side to the specified torque.